This PowerPoint presentation is part of the Level 2 Dementia Awareness run by Plato Training, and it is part of Unit 4, Understand the Factors that Influence Communications and Interactions with Individuals with Dementia. The aims and objectives of the session are to understand the factors that influence communication and interaction with individuals who have dementia, to understand how dementia and other factors may influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact with others, and to understand how memory impairment may affect the ability of an individual with dementia to use verbal language. You will see that on each of the slides there is a green box, usually located on the right-hand side, which this tells you which slide, which question each slide relates to. But it's also important to share your own ideas when you're working through the PowerPoints to expand your answer within your workbook. And just to remember that, the PowerPoint presentation, the slides are here to guide you. And it is good to do some further research to give you more understanding of the contents of each of the areas that you're going to be looking at, and also to help us to see your your understanding, and it shows you are able to do wider reading of the topics. So the next few slides we're going to look at relate to all of the questions, and we're going to start with looking at what is communication. Well, communication is a way of getting or giving information. And good communication is very important when you're working with others or looking after people. You'll also get information from people such as what they want to do, or even, how they feel. You might need to give information to others, such as telling them the time of an appointment or when the bus is going to pick them up. But communication is a way of getting and giving information. There are lots of skills needed to communicate well, and these can include using facial expressions. So it's so important because people can pick up so much from the expression on your face, whether you're happy, whether you're feeling sad, but they can pick up a lot from your expression. Speak clearly, really important. The clearer you speak, the more that somebody is going to understand you. Using language that others will understand. So important, thinking about using age appropriate language. Think about the age of the person that you're talking to. Think about who you're talking to. You might be talking to a professional person, so you might need to change your language slightly if you're speaking to them. Active listening and asking questions. Really, go hand in hand. Active listening is about making sure you're listening to the person that you're talking to, and that could include when we talked about facial expressions at the start. By the expression on your face, it shows that you're listening to that person. You might nod your head, and again, it shows that you're listening. Asking questions, again, like I say, hand in hand. If you start asking questions, it shows that you're listening to that person and you're communicating with them, and by asking the questions. Taking turns to speak and listen, really, really important. When you're talking to people who sometimes might find it more difficult to understand, you need to take turns, you need to take time to listen before you speak. Having patience and giving people time to speak, which is really what I just talked about there, but it is important. The patience, really important. It might take somebody a really long time to express themselves, to let you know what they want, but you've got to listen, you've got to let them take that time, and having patience without responding for them or talking for them. It's important that you have that patience. Showing you're interested in what is being said. Again, important. You need to show that you're interested. Facial expressions will do that, as we said at the beginning, but you really do need to be interested. And using positive body language, again, is really important. So there are different types of communication. And for example, one-to-one communication. So this is when two people are having a conversation. And to do this well, you need to ensure that each person is talking clearly, listening clearly, and using facial expressions like we talked before on the previous slide, smiling, and using body language, for example, nodding. Group discussions. So this is when communication is taking place with more than one person. So like telling a group of carers, um, discussing how to improve menus for the older residents in a care home. So the purposes of communication in health and social care and early years settings. So to negotiate and to liaise with service users, their family members, colleagues, and a range of professionals to exchange information. To promote interaction between group members. To get to know the service users and their needs. To explain procedures and to promote relationships and offer support. And this slide now relates to question number 1. And also the next few slides do as well. And we're going to look at how can dementia influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact in everyday living. So the world of someone with dementia is a different place than it used to be. It may be confusing, it can be sometimes frightening, and it can be frustrating and, even very sad. To work well with people with dementia, it's important to think about how their world looks and to respond to communication from their point of view. Dementia can influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact with others. We've already looked previously about cell death within the brain, and now we're going to look at what happens when cells die. So how do dead or damaged cells play a part in communication problems? Well, if the damaged or dead cells that previously transmitted communication signals to the brain, then there is a high probability that inaccurate signals or no signals will be transported to the part of the brain that supports an individual to communicate. A person with dementia may have a slower speed of thought or not be able to understand complex ideas. So, for example, they may take longer to process thoughts and work out how to respond to what is being said. And if this happens, then individuals could find it difficult to take part in conversations, to successfully exchange information, to build relationships, and also to retain friendship. They may find it difficult to learn, and they may find it difficult to generally share information with others. So this brings you to question number 1, and it's asking you to explain how dementia may influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact. Remember, when you're explaining at level 2, you need to ensure you are using full sentences and developing paragraphs. So you can structure your answer into 3 paragraphs with 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph. If you're not sure, ask the tutor. And also remember to explain, you need to use conjunctions, which are joining words. So use words such as because, therefore, however, but, as. They all help you to join the words together. Also make sure, when you're writing your answers, put it into your own words. You can look at the slides that we've talked about, but always put it into your own words, and it's also good to do your own research as well. We're now going to look at slides relating to question number 2, and we're looking at other factors that may influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact with others. And it's split into 2 categories. We're going to look at medical factors and social factors. So here are some of the medical factors. So it's not only cell death that causes communication problems, often physiological changes. So, for example, constriction of the cerebral circulation, which is a lack of blood flow to the cerebral arteries and veins that supply the brain. Degeneration of brain cells, so a decline or even death of nervous system cells. Aphasia, an impairment of language affecting the production of comprehension or speech or writing and reading. Agnosia, which is an inability to interpret sensations and recognize items. And here we look at the social factors. So there's not always a physiological reason for communication difficulties. The individual may feel unsafe, fearful, or could generally be unhappy. They could be experiencing abuse or neglect. The staff or the family using inappropriate communication, this then makes them feel increasingly confused or uneasy. And other residents may be acting aggressive towards the individual with dementia due to their own dementia or mental health issues. So these are all social factors that may influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact with others. So question number 2 is asking you to identify at least 4 factors that may influence an individual with dementia's ability to communicate and interact. It's an identify, so you need to put supporting sentence next to within your answer. And also it's saying at least 4 factors, so you must do at least 4, no less than 4. You can do more, but no less than 4. So we're going to look at slides now relating to question number 3. And we're going to look how memory impairment affect the ability when using verbal language, which is communicating through speech. So our memories are quite amazing and they perform the most complex and challenging processes. Despite plenty of research, there is still no certainty about how or why our memory works as it does. The most widely held view is that there are 3 important functions. Number 1, encoding, which is receiving and processing information. Number 2 is storage, which is keeping information somewhere it can be found if needed. Number 3 is retrieval, so the process of recalling information as and when it is needed. In order to carry out these important tasks, we all have different sorts of memory. So we've got sensory memory, which is a very short memory. Short-term memory which contains information that we can remember and recall for short periods of time. And long-term memory is an infinite in size and can store and recall information for very long periods of time. And all memories stored for longer than 30 seconds are in the long-term memory. An individual with dementia who has an impaired memory may be unable to share conversation. They may be unable to laugh. They may be unable to remember past experiences with friends, families, or loved ones. However, individuals with dementia can often remember experiences from a long time ago, but not what they did yesterday. It really does depend on the stage of the dementia and how that individual is. And question number 3 is asking you to outline how memory impairment may affect the ability of an individual with dementia to use verbal language. And at level 2, remember to outline this answer, you need to demonstrate your understanding of the different parts of the memory and then show how the effects of memory loss can affect verbal language. And that brings you to the end of this PowerPoint presentation. And just run through the aims and objectives again. So now you've completed the session, you should be able to understand the factors that influence communication and interaction with individuals who have dementia. You should be able to understand how dementia and other factors may influence an individual's ability to communicate and interact with others, and you should be able to understand how memory impairment may affect the ability of an individual with dementia to use verbal language.